Fraud Friday. I'm Bob Coleman. We're talking loan fraud. Bankers, public officials, and borrowers who got caught. Today, Blueacorn. I'm going to state right now, history will judge this as to be the largest PPP loan fraud in terms of dollar amount, scope, and damage that it did to the program. The highlight of the news is Stephanie Hawkridge is slated to go to trial next month, May 15th. It's unclear to me if her husband, co-defendant Nathan Reese, also will be going to trial with her. And as always with these white-collar trials, it could be extended. She's facing 5 counts of fraud, 1 wire fraud, 4 false statements. They're focusing right now on the fraudulent PPP loans that allegedly she got for herself and her husband. They're not even focusing on the fraud that was in Blueacorn. So there's 2 separate trials. And she, of course, has not been indicted for anything with respect to Blueacorn. Blueacorn did over $12 billion worth of PPP loans, over 800,000 loans. Between their 2 funding sources, they were the largest lender service provider processing these loans. The Senate did a report back in 2022, which criticized the company greatly for fraud, specifically lack of doing anything. And these people raked in millions and millions of dollars. And when, just to take a step back, remember when this went through, lenders were told the government will indemnify you. You simply have to rely on the borrower certification. And in return, we're going to get money out to Main Street as quickly as possible. In this case, less than 30 days. Remember, everything was shut down. We tend to forget that. Freeways were empty, restaurants were closed, offices were closed. And so the trade-off was to get money fast, to keep people employed. That was the purpose of the PPP program, that we will rely on the borrower's certifications. But there was still the rule, know your customer. The bank had to act in good faith. Blueacorn allegedly did not. This is what the Senate said. When her staff complained about this, she said, "We are not the fraud police." This is Blueacorn management. Even if the applicants are submitting fraudulent documents, we are covered by that attestation that what they're submitting is truthful. But bluntly, even if they're fraudulent, it's going to help stimulate the economy. And remember, the more you process, the more you get paid. One reviewer was saying that she was expected to approve 30 to 40 applications an hour. So if my math is right, that's what, 90 seconds to 2 minutes to look at these PPP loan applications to make sure that they were valid. So let's take a look at more of the fraud. This is the Senate greatly criticized Blueacorn so that they spent very little on fraud prevention while pocketing over $600 million personally. There's this famous video of them in a bar in San Juan, Puerto Rico. They moved to, Stephanie and her husband moved there, but they pocketed that and they were bragging of how much money they were making, but very little went to fraud. Let me throw out some statistics for you. They spent 0.79% or $8 million on fraud prevention. They spent $13 million on eligibility verification and $51 million on technology. Well, they got over $1 billion in fees, and they simply pocketed the money, allegedly. So this was simply a mechanism for them to get as much money as possible, and they bragged about it. One of the management of Blueacorn said, "We were doing this for the people we hired to make money, our friends and family. That is where the money is going, and it will be life-changing money for whoever does it." And that's what they were bragging about. They viewed this as the government's ATM to siphon off cash. Well, the problem is a lot of people got hurt. Blueacorn had terrible reviews. I personally talked to borrowers who applied for them, and they were promised money, and they never got the money. And they needed it. They needed it to meet payroll. And instead, these people are just siphoning it off. And all the promises that they made to their lenders that they would do all this work. They didn't do it. They were clearly overwhelmed, and the whole mantra was push, push, push. They had a program called the VIPPP program, VIPPP, and they steered the larger loans to that. And they made it very clear, the larger loans, we get paid more on those. There was the great quote, profanity lace, F them. We're not the first bank that's turned someone down for a loan. That is, if it was too small, they weren't going to touch it. Blueacorn application reviewers allege poor training, pressure to push through. Multiple staff working for Blueacorn to review PPP applications reported serious concerns about the processing of the applications. They alleged multiple control weaknesses and poor processes. On my first day, without knowing what I was doing, but following instruction from my superiors, I submitted at least 300 PPP loans to the SBA without any training or understanding of loan underwriting. When I did flag something, it was thrown back to me, and they said, simply push it. We want to get these loans approved. So why this is so egregious is, number one, the dollars that they pocketed were eye-watering, were a large amount, and that money should have gone into the controls to protect the American taxpayer, and they didn't do that. They simply said, we don't care about that. That's SBA's job, even though they were tasked very clearly that they had some duty to do fraud prevention. So we'll see what happens with the first trial. And as I said, this is for their own personal alleged crimes for getting personal PPP loans, as if that wasn't enough after they pocketed millions and millions of dollars from that. Thank you very much for joining me today for Fraud Friday, so you can stop criminals from stealing from you.